did the Lithuanians respond initially to the book? You said it was extremely popular, but what was the response of those that?
Wow. It was a very mixed response.
Okay.
There were many people who read the book, as I mentioned. But what's interesting is that apparently it was only people who had lived through the generation that lived through the war, or the very young people who had grown up in the European Union. The people from, let's say, 25, 30 to 60, or a little bit older maybe, didn't want to touch the book. They didn't want to be, have to sort of change their narrative that they had accepted, which was that the Holocaust was a terrible tragedy. The Germans came and murdered our Jews. But there was a kernel of truth to that, because without the Germans, without the Nazis, there wouldn't have been a Holocaust. But that's certainly far from the truth in terms of what actually took place in Lithuania.
And how did the Lithuanian government deal with the book, the findings that?
The head of national security went on television, national television, and said, "This book is a threat to Lithuanian national security." Now, when this happened, this has happened 2016 in Lithuania. So we all laughed and we said, this is ridiculous. Okay, but now in the wake of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and Putin's speech that he wants to denazify Ukraine, who knows? I mean, maybe it's not as weird as it sounds. I mean, the U.S. embassy called up the government in Lithuania and told the people to get a life. What do you think? This book is going to get inspire Russia to invade Lithuania? It seems ludicrous.
And it doesn't seem so ludicrous, you're saying.
Now, in retrospect, it may not have been so ludicrous. But the other point is that, for example, the person who shepherded Lithuania to independence, Vytautas Landsbergis, who was the first head of state also, he basically wrote to Ruta, "Now that you have betrayed the country, why don't you condemn yourself?" Which basically means go commit suicide. And Ruta was facing tremendous animosity. And later on, a year and a half later, when she questioned whether or not Adolfas Ramanauskas, who was one of the people who fought against the Soviets after the war, should be a hero of Lithuania, and she knew some very questionable facts about his, not questionable facts, but stories which reflected very poorly about Ramanauskas, and she said, well, maybe it's not such a good idea. Her publisher, Alma Litera, severed relations with her, took all copies of all her books, even though only one book had to deal with the Shoah. 27,000 copies were taken out of the bookstores. And initially they said they're going to turn them into toilet paper. But then they said that, but she went to court to get the books back, but she was stuck with them because no one wanted to sell them for her. No bookstore was willing to take them and sell them.
Was there a counter reaction to that, to the government's policy, perhaps in the academic world?
No, this is part
of the issue of free speech, liberal.
No one, listen to me, we could not find any serious allies in Lithuania to fight for the correct narrative of the Holocaust. There might be some intellectuals who cooperated, let's say, and were interviewed, but they're not speaking out. They're not taking on the government. This thing is from the top to the bottom. In other words, the government has changed quite a few times in Lithuania since independence, like in any normal democracy. But we never found anybody, and I've been going to Lithuania since independence, and not even in the media. It's very often the media in certain countries was on our side and pushing the government to prosecute Nazi war criminals. We couldn't find anybody who was willing to do that. It was almost like dooming themselves to losing their career.